Have you ever watched your entire family smile at you while stealing the one day that was supposed to be yours? Standing in my childhood living room on what should have been my 18th birthday, watching my parents unveil a custom designer cake, a surprise party with 100 guests, and a brand new car in the driveway, all for my 15-year-old sister, I felt something inside me crack. Not break. Crack. Like the first hairline fracture in a windshield that spreads slowly until the whole thing shatters. My mother's hand was on my shoulder, squeezing just a little too hard, her manicured nails digging in through my Target clearance sweater while she whispered, "You understand, don't you? Madison's been through so much with the competition. She needs this." The room smelled like expensive catering, seared salmon and truffle oil, and Madison's favorite vanilla buttercream frosting. The kind Mom said was too extravagant when I'd asked for a simple birthday dinner at Olive Garden 3 months earlier. I could feel my phone buzzing in my pocket with texts from the two friends I'd invited over for what I thought was my own low-key celebration. They were outside, confused, watching strangers in cocktail attire stream into my house. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone under the table, reading their messages. Is this your party? Why didn't you tell us it was formal? Should we leave?" I texted back with fingers that felt numb. "It's not mine, it's Madison's. I didn't know." The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was watching my father stand up, champagne glass raised, completely oblivious to me sitting 3 feet away, and say, to Madison, our shining star who makes every day feel like a celebration. 67 people raised their glasses. Not one of them looked at me. Not one of them remembered that today, November 12th, was the day I turned 18. The day I became an adult. The day that was supposed to matter. But I need you to understand how I got here. To this moment where I learned that being invisible in your own family is a choice they make every single day. And how, years later, I made sure they'd never forget my name again. 3 months earlier, I'd started my senior year at Westbrook High with exactly one goal: get into Northwestern's journalism program. I'd spent the entire summer working double shifts at Java Junction, saving every tip, every dollar, because Mom had been very clear that while they'd try to help, college funds were tight, with Madison's competitive dance career taking off. Madison, who at 15 had already been on 2 national tours, who had her own Instagram following of 43,000 people, who'd been featured in Dance Spirit magazine twice. I wasn't jealous of her success. I want to be clear about that. I was proud of her. What I didn't understand then was that my parents had decided there was only room for one daughter's dreams in our family, and they'd chosen hers before I'd even known we were competing. The first time I noticed something was off, I was 14. I'd won the regional young writers competition, a huge deal, with a scholarship attachment and a feature in the local paper. I remember running home, holding the acceptance letter, bursting through the door with my heart racing, ready to share the best news of my life. Mom was in the kitchen, on the phone, laughing. When I showed her the letter, she glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds before saying, "That's wonderful, honey," and immediately returning to her call. I stood there, letter still extended, realizing she was talking to Madison's dance coach about costume fittings. Dad came home an hour later, and when I tried to tell him, he said, "That's great, sweetheart. Hey, did you see the new routine Madison posted? 17,000 views already." The letter sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days before I quietly put it in my desk drawer. No one ever asked about it again. The pattern was so subtle I convinced myself I was being sensitive. When I made the honor roll every semester, it was expected because I was naturally academic. When Madison got a B instead of her usual C, it was a celebration-worthy achievement. When I got my first article published in the school paper, Mom forwarded it to two relatives with a brief, "nice job." When Madison posted a dance video, Mom shared it on Facebook with a three-paragraph caption about her incredibly talented baby girl. I started keeping track in a journal, not because I wanted to build a case, but because I needed to know if I was losing my mind. April 3, asked for help with college essay. Dad said he was busy helping Madison with choreography. April 17, honor roll again. Mom said, "We knew you would." No dinner out like they did for Madison's report card. May 2, won State Journalism Award. No one came to the ceremony. Madison had a recital the same night 3 towns over. I Ubered to mine alone. I told myself it would change when I turned 18. That milestone birthdays were sacred, untouchable. That even if every other day was about Madison, this one day would be mine. I dropped hints for weeks. Just something small, I'd said. Maybe dinner at that Italian place. And a cake. Mom had nodded, distracted, scrolling through Madison's competition schedule on her iPad. Of course, honey, we'll do something nice. I'd even shown her a simple cake design I liked, chocolate with raspberry filling, nothing extravagant. She'd screenshotted it. I saw her do it. That screenshot, I later learned, went into a folder she'd labeled Madison's 16th birthday ideas by accident. The universe has a sick sense of humor sometimes. The week of my birthday, the house felt different. There was an energy, a buzz of activity that I stupidly let myself believe was for me. Mom was on the phone constantly, but she'd always been a planner. Dad was in the garage more than usual, but he'd said something about birthday surprises. Madison was giggly and secretive, which I thought meant she was planning something sweet for me. We'd been close once, before the dance career consumed everything. I missed that version of us. November 12th started normally enough. I woke up to 0 texts from my parents, but they were early risers who didn't do digital communication much. I came downstairs expecting at least a card on the kitchen table. That's what we'd always done. Nothing. Mom was already gone, Dad was in his office on a conference call, and Madison was at morning practice. I made myself breakfast, trying not to feel the hollow disappointment settling in my chest. They're planning something, I told myself. They're just building suspense. I went to school, where my two closest friends, Emma and Jasmine, surprised me with cupcakes at lunch and a handmade card that made me tear up in the bathroom. They were the only ones who'd remembered without a Facebook notification. When I got home that afternoon, I heard voices. Multiple voices. I opened the door to find our living room transformed, streamers in purple and silver, Madison's favorite colors, dozens of balloons, a catering setup in the dining room, and at least 30 people already milling around with champagne flutes. My mother spotted me immediately. Her face did something complicated, a flicker of something that might have been guilt, quickly replaced by a bright, determined smile. She crossed the room in seconds, heels clicking on our hardwood floors, and grabbed my shoulder with that too-tight grip. "You understand, don't you?" she whispered, her breath smelling like the Pinot Grigio she'd clearly already started on. Madison's competition season has been so stressful, and she saw this party planning board on Pinterest for a sweet 15 and just fell in love with the idea. We couldn't say no. You know how sensitive she is. And you're so mature, so understanding. You don't need all this fanfare. You've always been our independent one. The words were designed to make me feel guilty for even considering objecting. That's what gaslighting looks like in a family. They frame your disappointment as selfishness, your hurt as immaturity. I stood there, frozen, as more guests arrived. People I didn't even recognize. Madison's dance friends, Mom's book club, Dad's golf buddies. The house filled with noise and laughter and the clinking of expensive glassware, and I felt myself shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller until I might as well have been invisible. I texted Emma and Jasmine to go home. I couldn't let them see this. Couldn't let them witness my own family erasing me. Madison made her entrance 20 minutes later like a homecoming queen, wearing a dress that must have cost $600, her hair professionally styled, makeup flawless. She was beautiful and glowing and completely oblivious, or maybe not oblivious. Maybe she just didn't care. She hugged me briefly, said, "Thanks for understanding, sis, you're the best," and floated off into her crowd of admirers. The cake came out at 7 p.m., a four-tier masterpiece with fondant flowers and edible gold leaf, the kind of cake you see at weddings. It said Madison's Sweet 15 in perfect calligraphy. I watched Mom take hundreds of photos, watched Dad tear up during his toast about his baby girl growing up, watched strangers sing happy birthday to my sister on my birthday. I ate a piece of cake in the kitchen alone, standing by the sink, and it tasted like absolutely nothing. The party wound down around 11 p.m. I'd spent most of it in my room, door closed, music on, writing in my journal. Not sad entries, observational ones. Detached, almost clinical notes about what had happened, who'd said what, the timeline of events. I was documenting, though I didn't fully know why yet. When the last guest left, Mom knocked on my door. She came in without waiting for an answer, sitting on the edge of my bed with a tired sigh. "You're not upset, are you?" she asked, and the question was so absurd I almost laughed. Because that would be really unfair to Madison. She didn't ask to be born 3 days after your birthday, and this party was important for her social media presence. Her followers expect content. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who'd convinced herself that one daughter's Instagram engagement was more valuable than another daughter's milestone. "I'm not upset," I lied, because I'd learned that telling the truth in this family only led to me being labeled difficult. She looked relieved, patted my leg, and left. I heard her downstairs telling Dad, "She's fine. I told you she'd understand. She's always been so low maintenance." That phrase, low maintenance, followed me for years. It was their code for doesn't require our attention or won't cause problems if we ignore her. But something shifted in me that night. Lying in bed, still fully clothed, staring at my ceiling, I made a decision. Not a revenge decision yet. Just a simple, clear-eyed decision. I would stop waiting for them to see me. I would stop shrinking myself to make room for Madison's spotlight. I would build something so undeniable, so substantial, that erasing me would be impossible. I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I knew it started with getting out. The next morning, I applied to Northwestern, USC, Columbia, and NYU, every top journalism program that was far enough away that dropping by for Madison's recitals wouldn't be a casual request. I worked every shift Java Junction would give me. I wrote for the school paper, started a local news blog covering city council meetings that actual adults started reading, and I stopped going to Madison's competitions. Mom asked why once, with that edge in her voice that said I was being petty. "I have work," I said simply. "And you have Dad, she won't miss me." "You're right," Mom said, which hurt more than I'd expected. "She won't." I got into Northwestern with a partial scholarship. The financial aid package required a parent contribution of $18,000 a year. I sat my parents down in March, 6 months after the stolen birthday, and presented the offer letter with detailed spreadsheets showing exactly how we could make it work. I'd saved $11,000. I'd applied for 16 different scholarships. I needed them to cover the gap. Dad glanced at the papers for 30 seconds before saying, "Honey, Madison's national competition season starts next year. The travel costs alone are going to be astronomical. We just can't swing this right now. Maybe community college for a year or two, then transfer. Community college. While Madison got private coaching at $200 an hour, I felt that crack in my chest widen. I've been saving for 3 years, I said, keeping my voice level. I've done everything right, this is my dream. Mom reached across the table, took my hand with this pitying expression that made my skin crawl. And we're so proud of you. But dreams have to be realistic, honey. We have to prioritize as a family. Madison's career has an expiration date, dancers age out. You can write anywhere, anytime. Education isn't going anywhere. The logic was so twisted, so perfectly designed to make their neglect sound like reason, that I just sat there for a moment, speechless. Then I stood up, gathered my papers, and went to my room. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I called Northwestern's financial aid office and asked about student loans, work study, anything. They helped me piece together a package that would bury me in debt but get me there. I signed the papers without telling my parents. At graduation, when they announced my full-ride journalism scholarship to Northwestern, which I'd won 2 weeks before after a competitive essay contest, Mom hugged me and whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked her in the eye and said, "I did, you weren't listening." I left for Chicago that August with everything I owned in 7 boxes and a backpack. Mom cried at the airport, saying she'd miss me, asking why I seemed so distant lately. Dad slipped me $200 and told me to be smart with money. Madison hugged me and said, "You're so lucky. I wish I could just leave and have adventures." None of them understood that I wasn't leaving for adventure. I was leaving for survival. College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. No one knew me as Madison's sister or the quiet one. I was just Sophie, and I was good, really good. I joined the school paper, started covering local politics, broke a story about university housing discrimination my sophomore year that got picked up by the Chicago Tribune. Professors noticed me. Peers respected me. And slowly, carefully, I built a network of mentors, contacts, and opportunities. I went home for Christmas my freshman year. Madison's Instagram following had hit 90,000. He house was covered in professional photos of her mid-leap, mid-spin, frozen in moments of perfection. There were no photos of me. Not recent ones anyway. A few baby pictures mixed in with Madison's childhood shots, but nothing from high school, nothing from my graduation. It was like I'd stopped existing to them when I stopped being convenient. I stayed for 3 days. On day 2, some of Madison's dance friends came over. One of them, scrolling through Instagram on our couch, looked up at me and said, "Wait, Madison has a sister." Madison laughed it off, but she didn't correct the girl's surprise. She didn't say, "Of course, this is Sophie." She just said, "Yeah, she goes to school in Chicago." Past tense, like I was a historical fact rather than a person sitting 10 feet away. Mom was in the kitchen and heard the whole exchange. She didn't say a word. I went back to school and threw myself into work. I stopped calling weekly, then monthly. I posted on Facebook maybe 4 times a year. I missed Madison's 16th birthday, the real one, which they threw her an even bigger party for with a rented venue and a DJ. Mom called me crying, saying I was abandoning the family and punishing Madison for something that wasn't her fault. I almost broke, almost apologized. But then Dad got on the phone and said, "Your mother's very hurt. You're being selfish. We raised you better than this." And just like that, the guilt evaporated. They'd raised me exactly like this, taught me that my feelings didn't matter, that taking up space was selfish, that asking for anything was unreasonable. I told them I had finals and hung up. Junior year, I landed an internship at a digital media startup called Meridian Media Group. Small operation, 10 people, but they were doing innovative work in long-form investigative journalism with serious financial backing from tech investors. I started as a research assistant, fact-checking articles, pulling public records. I was good at it, better than good. I found connections other people missed, caught errors before they became lawsuits, turned routine stories into front-page material with the right documentation. 6 months in, they offered me a junior reporter position. By senior year, I had my own column. Madison's dance career peaked around the same time. She'd been cast in a national commercial and a music video, had representation from a legitimate talent agency, and was performing in showcases that actually paid. Mom's Facebook was a shrine to her accomplishments. I'd scroll through sometimes, late at night, seeing post after post about my talented daughter and so blessed to be this girl's mom. Singular, daughter, not daughters. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. I graduated summa cum laude. Mom, Dad, and Madison didn't come to the ceremony. There was a huge opportunity for Madison, a showcase in front of producers from a major network. They sent a card and a $50 Visa gift card. My mentor from the Tribune, Janet Rios, came instead. She sat in the family section, cheered when they called my name, and took me to dinner afterward. Over wine, I was finally old enough to legally drink. She asked me about my family. I told her the truth, all of it. The stolen birthday, the college funds, the invisible childhood. She listened without interruption, then said something that changed everything. You're a journalist. You know how to tell stories. You know how to build evidence. Why are you letting them write your narrative? I didn't know what she meant at first. Then she explained. Right now, they're the authors of your story. They decided you're the low-maintenance daughter who doesn't need attention. They tell that story to everyone, to relatives, to Madison, to themselves. And you've accepted that role. But what if you wrote your own story, not for revenge, for truth? What would that look like? I thought about it for weeks. Months, really. I graduated, got hired full-time at Meridian Media Group, and moved into a tiny studio apartment in Lincoln Park. I was making decent money, building a portfolio, getting noticed. I dated a little, made real friends, started therapy to unpack the family dynamics that had convinced me I was inherently forgettable. My therapist, Dr. Patricia Chen, was the one who named what I'd experienced: emotional neglect and systematic favoritism. It's a form of psychological abuse, she said gently, and it's okay to be angry about it. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just focused. I worked 80-hour weeks, broke major stories, got promoted to senior investigative reporter at 24. Meridian Media Group got acquired by a larger conglomerate for $48 million. As one of the original team members with equity options I'd barely understood when I signed them, I suddenly had $600,000 in the bank. 6 months later, I leveraged that into a co-founder position at a new digital journalism startup WIT. Serious venture capital backing. By 26, I was executive editor of a publication with 2 million monthly readers. By 28, I was wealthy. Not rich. Wealthy. Stock options, real estate investments, the kind of money that meant I'd never worry about $18,000 in college costs again. I didn't flaunt it, didn't post about it, kept my LinkedIn updated but generic. I was building something, but I was doing it quietly. Mom and Dad knew I was doing well in journalism, but they didn't ask for details. Madison, now 25 with a moderately successful dance career that was plateauing as she aged out of the ingenue roles, would occasionally text me asking for career advice or connections in media. I'd respond politely but vaguely. I wasn't ready yet. The shift came on my 30th birthday. I was in my penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago, 3,000 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, the kind of place that had been photographed for architectural magazines. I'd bought it for $4.2 million years earlier, and it was now valued at $10 million thanks to the market and renovations I'd commissioned. I was sitting on my balcony, drinking expensive champagne when Mom called. "Happy birthday, honey," she said, bright and cheerful. 30 years old, can you believe it? Where does the time go? We chatted for 5 minutes. She told me about Madison's upcoming wedding. She was marrying her high school sweetheart, a nice guy who managed a gym franchise. They were planning a big destination wedding in Cabo. "We'd love for you to come," Mom said. "It's going to be beautiful." Madison's been planning for 2 years. "What's the date?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew. "November 12th, Mom said. "Perfect timing, right as the weather gets cool here but still gorgeous in Mexico. Isn't that lucky?" My birthday, again, 12 years later, and Madison was getting married on my birthday. "Did she choose that date on purpose?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Mom laughed. "Oh, honey, no, it's just when the venue had availability. Don't make it a thing. You're always so sensitive about dates." There it was, the casual dismissal, the gaslighting so reflexive she probably didn't even realize she was doing it. "I'll check my schedule," I said and ended the call. I sat there for an hour, watching the sun set over the lake and felt something crystallize inside me. Not anger, clarity. They hadn't changed. They would never change. And I was done making myself smaller to accommodate their narrative. I called Janet Rios, my old mentor. "Remember what you said about writing my own story?" I asked. "I'm ready." The plan wasn't about destroying them. It was about making the truth impossible to ignore. I spent 3 months preparing, and it felt like working the biggest investigative story of my life. I started with documentation. I went through 12 years of emails, text messages, phone records, family photos, or the lack thereof. I created a timeline spreadsheet tracking every major life event from age 14 to 30, my achievements in one column, Madison's in another, and our parents' responses in a third. The pattern was damning. 37 significant accomplishments on my side, 41 on Madison's. Mine averaged 1.2 family acknowledgments per event. Hers averaged 8.7. I had receipts for everything. Screenshots of Mom's Facebook showing 247 posts about Madison in 12 years versus 11 about me. Analysis of family photo albums showing Madison appeared in 89% of photos taken since she was 12, while I appeared in 31%, and only 8% featured just me. Financial records I'd obtained through a strategically friendly conversation with my grandmother, who still had access to family trust documents, showing that Madison had received approximately $340,000 in direct financial support for her dance career, while I'd received $1,200 total, the $200 from Dad when I left for college, plus birthday and Christmas gifts. I interviewed old classmates, teachers, family friends, people who'd witnessed the dynamic. I recorded these conversations with permission, asked careful questions, got statements on record. My high school English teacher, Mrs. Davidson, remembered the writing competition I'd won. "I was so surprised your parents didn't come to the ceremony," she said on tape. "You were the first student from our school to win regionally in 15 years. Madison had a recital that night, didn't she?" I remember because several parents mentioned it. Emma and Jasmine, my friends from high school, gave detailed accounts of the stolen 18th birthday. "We thought there'd been some miscommunication," Emma said. But when we saw you texting us from inside your own house, telling us to leave because it wasn't your party, we realized it was intentional. That was the moment we understood your family situation wasn't normal. I hired a private investigator to pull public records on family finances, not for anything illegal, just to establish factual timelines. When had they bought Madison's car? 3 days after my 18th birthday, registered in her name despite her being 15 and unlicensed. When had they refinanced the house? 2 months after I left for college, taking out equity for home improvements that turned out to be a dance studio addition for Madison. None of this was criminal. It was just proof of choices. Priorities. A systematic pattern of investment in one child and disinvestment in another. I built a website. Not public, not searchable, password protected, and designed like a digital evidence file. Professional, clean, organized by category, financial disparities, emotional neglect, pattern of favoritism, photographic evidence, third-party testimonies, communications analysis. Each section had subsections with documentation, timestamps, sources. It was airtight, journalistic, irrefutable. Then I waited for the right moment. Madison sent the formal wedding invitation. Destination wedding in Cabo, November 12th, 3-day celebration, black tie events, the works. The invitation was addressed just to me, no plus one, despite me mentioning my partner of 2 years in occasional family calls. Madison had given plus ones to cousins I barely knew. The RSVP card had a handwritten note from her. So glad you can finally make a family event. Mom and Dad are paying for your room, so no excuses. The assumption that I couldn't afford it. The condescension. The complete lack of awareness. I RSVP'd yes. Booked my own room at the resort, the presidential suite, actually, which I paid for myself. I didn't tell them. I reached out to extended family who'd be there, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. I arranged private dinners, coffee meetings, casual beach walks during the wedding weekend. I told them I wanted to reconnect and share some things I've been working through in therapy. Most agreed readily. They'd always liked me, in that vague way you like quiet relatives who don't cause drama. The wedding weekend arrived. I flew first class, checked into my suite with its ocean view terrace and private plunge pool, and prepared myself mentally. Dr. Chen and I had done months of therapy preparing for this moment. You're not doing this to hurt them, she reminded me in our last session. You're doing this to be seen, to stop participating in your own erasure. Whatever happens, that's valid. The first event was a welcome dinner on the beach, casual, they said, though everyone was dressed in designer resort where that cost more than my first car. I wore a simple linen dress from Reformation, did my own makeup, kept my jewelry minimal. I didn't need to compete. I just needed to be ready. Mom spotted me first, rushing over with a hug that felt performative. You made it. We were worried you'd cancel. You're always so busy with work. She'd told relatives I was some kind of writer in Chicago, which I thought was hilariously reductive given that I'd been featured in Forbes 30 under 30 3 years earlier. Dad shook my hand, actually shook my hand like I was a business acquaintance, and asked if my flight was okay. Madison was holding court by the bar, surrounded by bridesmaids, glowing in her rehearsal dinner dress. She waved when she saw me, blew a kiss, and went back to her conversation. Dinner was long tables in the sand, fairy lights, mariachi band, top-shelf tequila flowing. I sat between Aunt Carol and my cousin Jeremy, both of whom I'd scheduled breakfast with the next morning. I was pleasant, engaged, asked questions about their lives. I was laying groundwork. After dinner, during the dancing, I approached Madison. She hugged me, smelling like expensive perfume and cocktails. I'm so happy you're here, she said, and I believed she meant it. Madison wasn't malicious. She was just oblivious, raised to believe the world revolved around her because our parents had built that universe. I wouldn't miss it, I said. Your wedding on my birthday, very special. She blinked. Wait, is it your birthday? She genuinely didn't remember, didn't connect the date. Yeah, I said, I turn 30 tomorrow, same day you're getting married. Her face did something complicated. Oh my God, Sophie, I didn't even think about that. I'm so sorry. I don't know, we can sing happy birthday at the reception or something. The offer was so absurd, so perfectly Madison, that I just smiled. Don't worry about it. This is your day, we both know how this works. She looked uncomfortable but relieved to be let off the hook. You're the best sister, she said, squeezing my hand before floating away to her fiancé. I watched her go, feeling nothing but a strange calm. The next morning, I had breakfast with Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim. We sat on their private terrace, eating fresh fruit and drinking strong coffee, and I opened my laptop. I want to show you something. I said, I've been processing a lot in therapy, and I want to share it with family. I need you to understand what the last 16 years have been like for me. I walked them through the website. I didn't editorialize, didn't cry, just presented the evidence like the journalist I was. The financial disparities, the Facebook post analysis, the photos, the emails, the pattern. I watched Aunt Carol's face change as she scrolled through the timeline of my 18th birthday, the text messages I'd saved, the photos from the party that Mom had posted online, the credit card receipts showing exactly how much they'd spent on Madison's Sweet 15 on my 18th birthday. $47,000, I said quietly. They spent $47,000 on Madison's 15th birthday party, held on my 18th birthday, and gave me a Target gift card 3 days later with an apology note saying they'd forgotten to plan anything. Uncle Jim, a lawyer, was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Sophie, I had no idea. We all thought your parents always said you were independent, that you preferred it that way. I know what they said, I replied. I have those emails too. Mom told you I didn't want a big fuss for my college graduation. I have the text messages where I begged them to come, where they said they would, where they canceled the day before because Madison had a showcase. I showed them the thread. Aunt Carol started crying. I had 5 more of these conversations over the next 24 hours. Grandma Helen, who wept openly and apologized for not seeing it. Cousin Jeremy and his wife, who were horrified. Uncle Paul, Dad's brother, who got angry on my behalf. Each time I was calm, factual, clear. I wasn't asking them to choose sides. I was asking them to witness the truth. By the time the wedding ceremony arrived on November 12th, my actual 30th birthday, the family whisper network was buzzing. I could feel the shift in how people looked at me, with awareness, with discomfort, with something like respect. The ceremony was beautiful. Beachfront, sunset, Madison looked stunning. I sat in the 3rd row with extended family, not in the front row where parents and siblings traditionally sat. That spot had been given to Madison's bridesmaids. I watched the whole thing with detached appreciation, the way you'd watch a well-produced play. During the reception, Mom found me at the bar. She'd had enough champagne to be emotional. People are saying things, she said, her voice tight. They're asking me about your birthday. About college. About that party when you were 18. Why are you bringing up old history? Why are you trying to ruin Madison's wedding? I turned to face her fully. I'm not bringing up anything, I'm just not hiding it anymore. There's a difference. Her eyes narrowed. You're being vindictive. This is so unlike you. What happened to our sweet, understanding Sophie? She grew up, I said, and she got tired of being invisible. Dad appeared then, sensing conflict. Is there a problem here? Your daughter is causing drama, Mom hissed. At her sister's wedding. Which daughter? I asked pleasantly. Because I'm also your daughter and it's also my birthday. Again, for the second time, you've made my birthday about Madison. Dad's face flushed. That's not fair. Madison didn't choose this date to hurt you. I know, I said. She didn't choose it at all. She doesn't even remember it's my birthday. You raised her not to think about me. Mission accomplished. People were starting to stare. Uncle Paul approached, putting a hand on my shoulder in solidarity. Grandma Helen was watching from a nearby table, her face set in a way I'd never seen before. Dad looked around, realizing they had an audience. We should discuss this privately, he said. We've been discussing it privately for 16 years, I replied. And it hasn't changed anything, so maybe it's time other people knew the truth. Mom's voice went sharp. What truth? That we had two daughters and one needed more support. That Madison had a career with actual potential and we had to prioritize. That you've always been so self-sufficient that you didn't need us the way she did. There it was, the admission she didn't even realize she was making. You're right, I said. I was self-sufficient, because you gave me no choice. I learned at 14 that asking for your attention was pointless. That accomplishing things meant nothing if they weren't Madison's accomplishments. That my pain, my needs, my existence were negotiable. And I survived that. I thrived despite that. But don't stand here and pretend it was my choice. Madison appeared then, looking confused and upset. What's going on? Why is everyone fighting at my wedding? It's not about you, Mom said quickly. Your sister is having some issues. It's Sophie's birthday, Aunt Carol said loudly, standing up from her table. Today is Sophie's 30th birthday. Did you all know that? Did anyone here besides me know that Madison scheduled her wedding on her sister's 30th birthday? The room went quiet. Madison's face went pale. I didn't know. Sophie, I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said gently. You didn't know because they never taught you to think about me. You're not the villain here, Madison, you're just the favorite, but that doesn't mean what they did to me was okay. Madison looked at our parents. Is that true? Did you know it was her birthday? Mom and Dad exchanged a look. Dad cleared his throat. We thought Sophie wouldn't mind. She's never been big on birthdays. I've never been big on birthdays because you made celebrating mine impossible. The words came out louder than I intended. The mariachi band had stopped playing. Over 100 guests were watching us now. When I was 18, you threw Madison a $47,000 party on my birthday and didn't even tell me it was happening. I came home to find my birthday had been stolen. And you made me feel guilty for being hurt. You've been making me feel guilty for existing on the periphery of this family for my entire adolescent and adult life. Someone in the crowd gasped. I didn't care anymore. The truth was out, messy and raw and unstoppable. I have emails, I continued, text messages, financial records, therapy notes, statements from teachers, friends, family members. I have documented proof of 16 years of systematic emotional neglect and favoritism, and I'm not saying this to hurt Madison or ruin her wedding. I'm saying it because I'm done pretending it didn't happen. I'm done being the low-maintenance daughter who doesn't make waves. Dad found his voice. You're being dramatic. Every family has dynamics. We did our best. Your best involved spending $340,000 on Madison's dance career while giving me $1,200 total. Your best involved missing my college graduation, my award ceremonies, every significant moment of my life because Madison had a recital. Your best involved forgetting my birthday multiple times and then convincing me I was selfish for caring. Mom was crying now, but they were angry tears. We supported you. We let you go to college. You didn't let me do anything, I said. I paid for it myself with loans and scholarships because you told me Madison's career was more important. And I succeeded anyway. I became everything you said I couldn't be, but I did it alone. Madison was crying too, looking between me and our parents. Is this true, Mom, Dad? They didn't answer, couldn't answer because the evidence was overwhelming and we all knew it. Uncle Jim stood up. I think we need to give this family some space, he announced to the reception. Why don't we all take a break, let them talk privately? But Grandma Helen shook her head. No, I think we've let them handle this privately for too long. That's how this happened. We all saw bits and pieces and assumed it was fine because Sophie seemed fine. But she wasn't fine. She was just strong, and they took advantage of that. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Extended family members started sharing their own observations. Aunt Carol mentioned the writing competition. Uncle Paul talked about the times he'd invited me to events and been told by my parents I was too busy, when he later learned they'd never passed along the invitations. Cousin Jeremy pulled out his phone and showed everyone Mom's Facebook page, scrolling through years of posts. The ratio was devastating when displayed publicly. Madison sat down at her own reception table, looking shell-shocked. Her husband, Tyler, held her hand, whispering to her. She kept shaking her head, crying, saying, I didn't know, I really didn't know. Mom tried to regain control. This is inappropriate. This is Sophie's grudge, her issues. Show them the website, Uncle Jim said to me. Show everyone what you showed us. I hesitated. This was the nuclear option, but I'd come this far. I pulled out my phone, cast it to the reception's projection screen that had been showing Madison and Tyler's engagement photos, and pulled up my evidence file. The spreadsheets appeared on the 20-foot screen, the financial breakdowns, the photo analysis, the timeline of my 18th birthday with receipts and credit card statements. You could have heard a pin drop. Madison stood up, walked to the screen, and just stared at it. At the evidence of her privilege laid out in data and timestamps, at the proof of my erasure, she turned to our parents. You spent $47,000 on my 15th birthday, on her 18th birthday. Mom reached for her. Sweetheart, your career was taking off. We needed to make connections, invite the right people. It was my 15th birthday. Madison's voice cracked. I didn't need a $47,000 party. I needed Jesus, Mom. She was turning 18. That's a huge deal, and you just erased her. It was the first time Madison had ever stood up for me. The first time she'd seen past her own reflection. Dad tried a different tactic. Sophie, you're clearly successful. You turned out fine. Why are you so angry? Because turning out fine despite your neglect doesn't make the neglect okay. I was shaking now, adrenaline and emotion finally breaking through my calm. Because I had to raise myself. Because I spent years in therapy learning that I wasn't unlovable, I was just unloved by you. Because every accomplishment I've ever had has been lonely. And because you're standing here, at my sister's wedding on my 30th birthday, still trying to gaslight me into believing my pain isn't real. Grandma Helen stood up, walking slowly to where Mom and Dad stood. She was 83, frail but fierce. I'm ashamed of you, she said to her son, my father. I raised you better than this. Sophie, honey, I'm so sorry. We all failed you. We believed their narrative because it was easier than asking hard questions. She turned to the assembled guests. This young woman put herself through Northwestern, built a career in journalism, became a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, and bought a $10 million penthouse in Chicago, all without her parents' support. All while they told us she was fine and preferred independence. We should have looked closer. I should have looked closer. The gasps that followed that revelation were audible. $10 million penthouse. Forbes 30 Under 30. Suddenly, the family was looking at me differently. Not as the quiet, forgettable sister, but as someone who'd built an empire they knew nothing about. Mom's face went white. You bought a $10 million penthouse. Technically, I bought it for $4.2 million $3 years ago, I said. It's valued at $10 million now. I'm also an executive editor and co-founder of a digital media company with a $48 million valuation. I've won 2 Pulitzer nominations and an Investigative Reporters and Editors Award. But you wouldn't know that because you've never asked about my work. You've never asked about my life. You've never asked about me. Dad looked like he'd been punched. Why didn't you tell us? The question was so absurd I laughed. I tried, for years I tried. I sent you links to my articles, I mentioned my promotions in phone calls, I updated my LinkedIn. You weren't interested. You were busy posting Madison's Instagram videos and planning her next showcase. I took a breath, centering myself. But here's the thing, I didn't build my success for you. I didn't buy that penthouse to prove anything to you. I did it for me. Because I deserved a life where I mattered, where I was seen, and I found that life without you. The silence that followed was absolute. Madison was openly sobbing now. Tyler had his arm around her, but he was staring at our parents with undisguised disgust. You really did that to her, he said quietly. You really chose one daughter over the other like that, Mom tried one more time. We loved both our girls equally. No, Madison said, her voice stronger now. No, Mom, don't lie, not anymore. Look at that screen. Look at the numbers. That's not equal. That's not even close to equal. You sacrificed Sophie for me, and you made me complicit without even telling me. She walked over to me, her wedding dress rustling. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have known, but I didn't, and that's on me too. I hugged her, this sister I'd loved and resented in equal measure. You were a kid, I said. They made you the center of the universe. That's not your fault. But what you do now, knowing the truth, that's your choice. She pulled back, wiping her eyes, her mascara running. She looked at our parents. I think you need to leave, she said. This is my wedding and I don't want you here, not after seeing this, not after knowing what you did to my sister. Mom gasped. Madison, please. Leave, Madison repeated. Tyler and I will pay you back for the wedding. Every penny, but I can't look at you right now. Either of you. It was the ultimate reversal. Madison, the golden child, rejecting our parents at her own wedding. They stood there, frozen, as Grandma Helen took charge. I'll make sure they get to their room, she said firmly. Paul, Jim, help me escort them out. My uncles moved without hesitation, flanking Mom and Dad. As they were guided toward the exit, Mom turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Sophie. When you're older and alone, you'll regret destroying this family. I met her eyes steadily. I didn't destroy this family. I just stopped pretending it existed. They left. The reception stood in stunned silence for a long moment before Tyler stood up and raised his glass. To Sophie, he said loudly, Happy 30th birthday. I'm sorry it took your family this long to see you, but we see you. Now, the guests erupted in applause. It wasn't the ending I'd planned. I hadn't planned any of this, really, just the truth-telling. But as people came up one by one to hug me, to apologize for not noticing, to ask about my work and my life, I felt something shift inside me. The crack that had started 16 years ago on my 18th birthday finally closed. Not healed, healing would take time. But closed, sealed. I was whole in a way I'd never been. Madison insisted on cutting a second cake, a small one the resort bakery put together in 20 minutes, and having everyone sing happy birthday to me. It was awkward and perfect and completely surreal. My 30th birthday at my sister's wedding finally being celebrated. This is weird, right? Madison said, standing next to me as people sang. This is so weird. So weird, I agreed, and we both started laughing. The kind of laughter that's half crying, half relief, entirely cathartic. The wedding continued without our parents. Madison and Tyler's first dance, the toasts from friends, the party that went until 2 a.m. I stayed for all of it. Madison pulled me aside around midnight, both of us barefoot in the sand, holding tequila sodas. "I want to know you," she said. "The real you, not the version Mom and Dad created. I want to see your apartment, meet your friends, hear about your work. I want to be your sister for real." "I'd like that," I said and meant it. "But it's going to be complicated. I have a lot of anger still, a lot of hurt." "I know," she said. "I get it now. And I'm going to do the work, therapy, whatever it takes, because you deserved better. And I'm sorry I benefited from you not getting it." The days following the wedding were intense. The family group chat exploded with messages. Some relatives defended my parents, saying I'd been cruel to humiliate them publicly. Others defended me, sharing their own observations I'd never known about. Grandma Helen sent a long email detailing conversations she'd had with my parents over the years, where they'd explicitly told her not to make a fuss over me because it complicated Madison's psychology to share attention. Uncle Paul forwarded emails showing my parents had declined to contribute to a family college fund for me that relatives had wanted to start, saying I wouldn't need it because I was scholarship material. Mom and Dad sent me a letter, not an email, an actual letter, delivered to my hotel room the morning I was set to fly home. It was 4 pages of justifications, deflections, and conditional apologies. "We're sorry you felt neglected, but you have to understand the pressure we were under with Madison's career. We're sorry if our choices hurt you, but we were doing what we thought was best for the family. We're sorry this came out the way it did, but you chose to embarrass us publicly instead of talking to us privately." There was no accountability, no real apology, no acknowledgement of the pattern, the years, the damage, just more gaslighting wrapped in the language of reconciliation. I didn't respond. Dr. Chen had prepared me for this. "They may never give you the apology you deserve," she'd said. "Your healing can't depend on their acknowledgement." I folded the letter, put it in my evidence file, and flew home to Chicago. My penthouse felt different when I walked in. Lighter somehow. I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the lake, at the city I'd conquered on my own terms, and felt something I'd never quite felt before: pride. Not in my accomplishments, though those were substantial. Pride in surviving, in refusing to disappear. In finally, after 30 years, insisting on being seen. The professional fallout was unexpected. Within 2 weeks, 3 different media outlets reached out asking if I'd be willing to write about family dynamics and emotional neglect in high-achieving families. One of them was the New York Times. I spent a month crafting an essay, not about revenge, but about the invisible children in families with golden siblings, about how success despite neglect doesn't erase the neglect, about how you can love your family and still need to tell the truth about them. It published 2 months after Madison's wedding and went viral. Not Instagram viral, real viral. It was shared 847,000 times. It generated 16,000 comments from people saying, "This is my story, and I thought I was the only one." NPR interviewed me, then Good Morning America, then a book agent called. I wrote the book over the next year. Not a memoir exactly, but investigative journalism examining favoritism, birth order bias, and psychological parentification in American families. I interviewed 50 families, consulted with psychologists, built case studies. And yes, I included my own story with all the evidence, all the documentation, everything. I sent my parents an advance copy as a courtesy. They sent back a cease and desist letter from a lawyer claiming defamation. My own lawyer laughed when he read it. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, he said, and you have truth in triplicate. The book published. It became a New York Times bestseller. Mom and Dad didn't sue, they just stopped speaking to me entirely. Madison showed up. She came to my book launch in Chicago, brought flowers, sat in the front row. She'd started therapy, she told me, was working through her own guilt and complicity. Her marriage to Tyler was strong, but she'd realized she had a lot of unexamined privilege to unpack. I'm not the person they made me, she said, but I'm also not innocent, and I'm trying to figure out who I actually am without them shaping it. We started having monthly video calls, then visits. She came to Chicago and I showed her my world, my office, my favorite restaurants, the journalism awards on my wall. She showed me photos from her childhood that I wasn't in, and we talked about why. It was painful and slow and real. 2 years after the wedding, Madison had her first baby, a daughter she named Sophie Helen. She called me crying when she found out the gender. I want to do better, she said. I want her to grow up knowing both her aunts matter, all her family matters. I want to break this cycle. I flew out to meet my niece when she was 2 days old. Held this tiny person named after me and felt something break open in my chest. Hope, maybe, or healing, or just the possibility of both. My parents met their granddaughter too, but Madison set boundaries I never could have imagined her enforcing. You don't get to do to her what you did to Sophie, she told them, with me on speakerphone as witness. You don't get to play favorites. You don't get to erase anyone. If you can't treat all your family equally, you don't get access to mine. They agreed. Whether they meant it remained to be seen. But Madison was watching now. We both were. I'm 33 now. The book is in its 8th printing. I've given keynote speeches at psychology conferences, testified before family court judges about recognizing emotional neglect, consulted on custody cases. My work shifted after that wedding, less breaking news, more investigative features on family systems, childhood trauma, generational patterns. The journalism I do now matters in a different way. It helps people see themselves, name their experiences, find their voices. I still live in that penthouse, though I've thought about selling it. Not because I can't afford it, but because I don't need to prove anything anymore. The apartment was built on a foundation of I'll show them. I'm ready to build something new on a foundation of I'm enough. I'm in a serious relationship now, Marcus, a civil rights attorney who understands complex family trauma because he has his own. We talk about the future, about whether we want kids, about what kind of family we'd build. One where everyone matters equally, I tell him, where no one has to earn love by being invisible. That sounds like a good family, he says. Madison and I text almost daily now. She sends me videos of baby Sophie, my namesake, and asks my advice on things. Sometimes it's parenting questions. Sometimes it's career stuff. She's transitioning from dance performance to choreography and teaching. Sometimes it's just sister stuff, stupid memes, complaints about Tyler leaving dishes in the sink, updates about relatives. It's the relationship we should have had all along, built from scratch in our 30s. My parents and I are cordial now, not close. We see each other at major family events, exchange pleasantries, stay on opposite sides of the room. Mom has never apologized, not really. She said I'm sorry things were hard for you, which isn't the same as I'm sorry I made things hard for you. Dad tries sometimes, awkward attempts at connection that feel transactional. Saw your book at the airport, he'll say. Must be doing well. It is, I'll say, and that's usually where it ends. I've stopped waiting for them to change. Stopped waiting for the moment they'll suddenly see me and love me the way I needed as a child. They are who they are, but I get to decide how much space they take up in my life now. And it's not much. On my 33rd birthday, November 12th, 3 years after the wedding that changed everything, Madison threw me a party. Nothing huge. 20 people I actually loved in a private room at a restaurant I'd mentioned liking once. She remembered. The cake was chocolate with raspberry filling, the exact one I'd shown Mom screenshots of when I was 17. Madison had found the image in my old Facebook photos and tracked down the bakery. There were speeches. Emma and Jasmine flew in from the East Coast. Marcus gave a toast about the strongest person he knew. Grandma Helen video called from her retirement community in Florida. And Madison stood up last, holding baby Sophie, and said, "To my sister, who taught me that truth matter. More than comfort. Who showed me what real strength looks like, who broke a cycle I didn't even know existed. Happy birthday, Sophie, I see you, we all see you now." I cried, the good kind of crying, the kind that means something is healing. After the party, Marcus and I walked along the lakeshore, his arm around me, my heels in my hand. "You did it," he said. "You rewrote the story." "I just told the truth," I said. "Yeah," he said. "That's the most powerful thing you can do." The truth is, revenge wasn't what I needed. I thought I wanted my parents to suffer the way I'd suffered, to feel the pain of being invisible, dismissed, erased. But what I actually needed was for someone to witness what had happened and say, "That was wrong. You deserved better." And once I gave that to myself, once I stopped waiting for them to validate my experience and just validated it myself, everything changed. The evidence wasn't about destroying them. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't crazy, that my pain was real, that the pattern I'd felt my entire childhood could be documented, measured, shown. And once I knew that for certain, once I had undeniable proof, I didn't need their acknowledgement anymore. I learned something important in those years of gathering evidence and building my case. You can't make people love you the way you need to be loved. You can't force parents who chose one child over another to suddenly see both equally. You can't logic or document or prove your way into someone's affection. But you can stop diminishing yourself to fit their narrative. You can stop apologizing for taking up space. You can stop making yourself small so they feel big. And when you do that, when you stand in your full truth and refuse to hide it anymore, some people will finally see you. And some won't. But the most important person who'll see you is yourself. I own a $10 million penthouse. I have a best-selling book. I've won awards and accolades and professional recognition. But none of that is why I'm whole now. I'm whole because I stopped waiting for my worth to be confirmed by people who decided I was worthless. I'm whole because I built a life where I matter to myself, to my partner, to my real sister, to the people I've chosen as family. I'm whole because I took the 18-year-old girl standing invisible at her own stolen birthday party and told her, "You were right. It was wrong. And you deserved so much better. But look what you built anyway." That girl would be proud of me now. Not for the money or the career or the revenge that wasn't really revenge. She'd be proud that I finally stopped apologizing for existing, that I finally demanded to be seen, that I finally chose myself the way our parents never did. And on my 30th birthday, standing in front of my family at Madison's wedding with my entire childhood documented in spreadsheets on a 20-foot screen, I gave that 18-year-old the one thing she'd always needed: a voice. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. Your story matters. And the moment you stop making yourself smaller to protect someone else's comfort, the moment you stop hiding your truth because it makes others look bad, the moment you stop apologizing for the space you take up in this world, that's when your real life begins. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, you're not alone. Share this if you needed to hear it today. Your pain is valid, your truth matters, and you deserve people who choose you, not just when it's convenient, but always. Like this if you're choosing yourself today, because that's where everything changes.